So, after you raised your initial capital, you moved to San Francisco, you set up, you know, literally from scratch, the initial team and started to execute against it. What does your day look like?
It definitely is a big shift when you go from just one or two people alone in a garage or a basement working with basically no capital to having a little bit of capital and now a little space to build product. My days have changed from being initially a lot of solo work, a lot of independent thinking, a lot of me meeting with investors or meeting with people to give me advice on how to build the company, to now largely focused on building. Now I would say as the person who's primarily in charge of product management and the product roadmap, I spend probably 25% of my time on product, on developing new product feature ideas, building those out into what that opportunity could look like or that feature, testing it with users and designing that and working on that process with our developers and with designers. I spend probably 25 to maybe even 50% of my time on hiring. Now that we have to build up our team and think about what's next and how do we get to the next stage of growth. And then I spend a significant amount of my time also helping empower the other people on my team. So thinking about how do I set up the other people on my team for success and manage their work streams. There's very little time now spent on, now I don't have to fundraise, so I spend very little time on talking to investors, although I sort of have a regular cadence of meetings and emails, so I don't have a big push later when I raise money. But I would say most of my time is focused on product and team.
If you compare, the internal dialogue you have with yourself about what you did that day and what you're planning to do the next day, how is that different from when you worked in a bigger company or a consulting firm?
Some elements are the same. There's a lot of, I think startups require founders and early employees to have the ability to structure their work. Otherwise, it can be overwhelming because there's so much to do. So just like when I was a consultant, I have to spend time work planning and being really organized about what hypotheses I'm testing and what research I need to gather in order to deliver what's next. So I do think a lot of the consulting training did come in handy for that. What's different is that you have full ownership and full responsibility. So if I have to create good information flows for myself to make those decisions. And that means spending time every week talking to users and being really deliberate about making sure that the voices that are influencing my decision making are the ones that are ultimately going to be consuming the product.
So if you had to do a little chart of your emotional ups and downs, and if at a company or a consulting firm it was like that, what does it feel like here?
I think it goes like this every day. But the amplitude changes. So every day is kind of like this if you think of these as like much bigger flows than when I was in consulting. But then there's periods of time that are much more stressful than others. So, making the decision to join the company or not, to start the company or not, or just figuring out if we're going to be able to raise money or not, getting on the edge of not being able to raise money, really high stress levels. Now we're kind of in a period of continuous building. So every day there's ups and downs because there's no buffer between you and the company. But we're also in a sort of more comfortable period where we don't have to stress about whether the company is going to exist tomorrow.